Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 77. I hope you enjoyed our second edition of the group podcast on Monday there with Ray, Ayrshire and Aaron. Next week, we'll find ourselves talking to certainly the first person I'm aware of growing quinoa, or quinoa, depending how you say it in the UK, Emily Adicott-Sauvois. I could have butchered that name and I apologise for have. Looking forward to that one on Friday. But today, we have probably a first for the R2Kast, in fairness, with a flower grower. So we're welcoming on Ben Cross, or on Instagram, you may know him as Alstroemeria Ben, who's going to enlighten us on flower growth, because it is something that I'm going to embarrass myself hugely on, and it is not something I know much about. So I'm very looking forward to this as well. Ben is actually out in the greenhouse. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that. And if you're not watching on YouTube, maybe jump over from Spotify to YouTube, as he will be sort of giving us some, well, maybe not demos, but showing what he's talking about as we go. So Ben, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, hi guys, hi listeners, hi viewers, and thanks very much for having me on your awesome podcast.
Just before we get started with another episode of the R2Kast, I would like to thank our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan Rural are heavily involved on the social media scene in the ag space with 120,000 followers on Instagram. They use this following to host social media takeovers with farmers throughout the country to showcase their stories. They also post to their rural community blog with further stories about these people in the industry. On top of this, they like to support initiatives that are championing the British agricultural industry, such as myself. So thank you to A-Plan Rural for that.
So we're actually filming this right before Christmas, so it's one of our busier weeks. So Christmas, V-Day, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day and Easter, they're the four biggies for us flower growers. So yeah, it's good to find some time to do this podcast in amongst all the chaos going on this week. So appreciate you having me on.
No, I mean, even more so, given it's a busy time, appreciate you finding the time at the minute, Ben. And this will be going out sort of January time. As you said, we're filming just before Christmas, and Ben is a bit of an expert in doing these talks. He's done more than I have, that's for sure. So maybe give us an idea what you just told me off camera there, Ben. How many talks have you done recently?
Yeah, so the big highlight, the big bullet point for this whole episode is that over 90% of flowers in the UK are now imported. And obviously the environmental impact of importing all those flowers is pretty redonkulous. And we're not just talking about supermarket flowers, but we're talking about supermarkets, florists, farm shops, they import flowers. Cafes and restaurants might have a locally sourced food menu, but where have the flowers come from that are on the dining room tables? Gas station, petrol station flowers, and letterbox flowers as well. So just within the UK, when you're out and about in your daily lives and you see flowers in a restaurant, in a cafe or whatever, there's over 90% they've been flown in and not grown. And we want to be promoting homegrown and not flown. So back in 2014, you can see on my T-shirt, if you're on YouTube, I started the British Flowers Rock campaign, which is all about doing what we're doing today, just educating the British public that, yes, when you buy cars, fashion, food, other types of farming, you've always got to support British. But with flowers, the industry is probably 30, 40 years behind where food is now in terms of awareness, education, product placement, labelling, and the whole thing. So we'll talk all about that. But when I started the British Flowers Rock campaign, I didn't know it would last this long. And I now do 50 or 60 British Flower Rock talks a year. So I go and do talks at horticultural shows, farming shows, anything to do with the environment, WIs, flower clubs. So if anyone's listening and is creating farming events where they want to promote sustainability in the environment, please also include flowers, because it's a £2.2 billion industry within the UK, and it's very much a forgotten industry with us flower growers. So yeah, I've been busy giving talks and doing the campaign as well as running the show on the ranch here. So that's a little introduction. Yeah.
Well, now you mentioned that, I mean, I work for SRUC, Scotland's Rural College. I'm an agricultural lecturer, but there is horticulture courses. I'm sure they'd be keen to have a talk if we could arrange something there, Ben. I'm sure that would be something.
Well, that's exactly what I do. So colleges up and down the country that can't come here. So local horticultural colleges, they come here in a minibus, have a little tour, and I go into the college, we do a talk, and we also do apprenticeship schemes. So that's how we staff here at Crosslands. We don't rely on cheap foreign labour and things like that. So you may have heard back in lockdown 1 and 2, oh, we've not got any staff to pick our veg or flowers. Well, we did. We actually had too many staff because all the colleges were out. So all the students were like, well, what do we do? Oh, we'll phone Ben for a job and part-time work. So it was like having the England squad or a football team, like a sports team. I had a squad rotation. So I actually had loads of staff because we have good, strong ties with local horticultural colleges. And that's a real big plus. So we don't have any labour coming in. It's all local people, and we do apprenticeship schemes of colleges. So I would love to, if colleges from Scotland can't come here, we just do what we're doing now on YouTube. Yeah. We just do a live video teaching them about sustainability within the flower industry. And so that's what I do. I do a lot of British Flowers Rock campaigning with colleges as well. So I'd love to be involved.
Perfect. Well, I'll mention to the relevant people who I don't actually know exactly who it is, but I'll get in touch. You mentioned staff there. How many staff's involved in an operation like this?
When I was a young whippersnapper, there was 26 people here. Now there are 6. Right. 2 big main reasons for the decline in staff. One of them is the benefit system we have now. So back in granddad's early days, we were inundated with people coming up to the farm gate. Mr. Cross, have you got any work? I want to work. I need to work. Those people don't exist anymore because they can get a free house and free money on what we now call the benefit system or whatever you call it. That's that's number 1 reason. Number 2 is Grandad used to get £1.95 a bunch at Covent Garden for our flowers. Now we don't even supply Covent Garden because if I did send 1 bunch up there, even at Christmas, they give me 50p. So I'd love to employ more people, but you physically, financially can't. So you end up working harder for longer for less money. So they're the 2 negatives. But the positive is, which we've just mentioned, we work just solely with local people and local horticultural colleges. And even when I do talks to colleges up the country, a student up there might actually live down here near Brighton and they can do work in Easter and summer. So that's what we do. We just give young people or people that want a career change an opportunity, because there's not many people like me left now. And a lot of people like me left are obviously having cheaper staff, whereas we don't want that. We want to give people an opportunity that have studied horticulture and farming, and we want to give them a placement, because there's quite a few more people wanting to learn about farming, horticulture, agriculture, but there's less jobs for them because we're employing cheap foreign labour, and that's not right. We want to give our own people a good start in life. So, we promote British flowers, British grown. So therefore we want to promote our own people within the industry. So, that's what we do. So that's our staffing summed up, really.
I think that's quite an important responsibility, the way you do it. I think there's somewhat of an undervaluement of staff in this country, especially in quite a lot of the rural sector. So it's good that that's sort of a pledge you've made. You mentioned your dad, your granddad, and your great-granddad. Could you tell us what the relevance of that is?
Yeah, so I'm 4th generation. So we've been going and growing since 1936. I'm just going to flip-flop the camera for guys on YouTube. I'm just going to flip-flop the camera. So what we've got set up on YouTube here, we're just in one of our little greenhouses. Little greenhouses, it might be big.
I was going to say, that's not what little means in my head.
Yeah. So this path, the centre path that we've been walking up and down, this path used to be outside, and there used to be wooden greenhouses to the left, and to the right we had the big storm of 87 that blew away all the greenhouses. So the greenhouse that we're doing this podcast and YouTube video in, this was all completed in 88. I remember as a 5-year-old, I was born in 80, so about a 5-year-old, Grandad got me in here picking up bits of broken glass and putting them in buckets from the old storm. So this was built in 87, 88. So that's the greenhouse that we're in today. But it all started in 1936. Back in the 1930s, we had the Great Depression, something that may happen in 2023. We don't know yet.
It genuinely could.
But basically, a lot of miners and a lot of shipbuilders were out of work in the 1930s, the Great Depression, high unemployment. We didn't have the benefit system like we have today. So back then, the government set up over 20 areas around the UK where unemployed families would go and work and farm the land. And my great-grandparents were originals. They came down from Abertillery to Sidlesham, which is just down here on the south coast near Chichester. If you don't know Chichester, or Chai as I call it, that's between Brighton and Pompey, Portsmouth. And they moved down to the settlement, down to this government settlement down at Sidlesham in 1936. My granddad then joined them after World War II. He met my nan, who was a Pompey girl just down the road here, had my dad, uncles and aunties on the Market Garden Settlement, on the Land Settlement Association. And basically, if you want to Google, the listeners want to Google Land Settlement Association or LSA Sidlesham, you can get a whole raft of information. It's now a National Lottery funded historic scheme. And some of you guys may have heard of the repair shop on your TV boxes.
Yeah, I've seen it.
That's filmed at the Weald Downland Museum, which is 10 minutes away from me. And it's basically a museum where they erect and put up houses. And one of the houses that were on the Market Garden Settlement, it's going to be put up next year. And there's going to be a whole physical exhibition about the LSA at this museum. But when you were basically part of this government scheme, the LSA, the Land Settlement Association, the government basically sold your produce through the market, like a marketing tool, basically. So they would go, Mr. Cross, I've sold your courgettes for that much, your cabbages for that much, and here's your percentage, you know. And people getting on well with it were like, why are we doing this? Why can't we set up on our own? And that's really what the government wanted you to do. They would give you a house, give you your land, and if you got on well with it, you could make enough earnings to set up on your own. And that's what Grandad did in 57. So where I'm stood today, was another nursery where they used to grow Christmas trees. So we're filming this at Christmas, so it's quite relevant. But yeah, where this greenhouse I'm stood at the moment used to be Christmas trees. So they were the first product we sold off of our land to get rid of them to make way for back then wooden greenhouses. So yeah, it all started in 1936. And then we've been based here where I live today since 57. So very rare in farming, but even rarer in the cut flower trade that we're going in 2023 nearly. So, when this podcast comes out, it will be 2023. So, yeah, 1936 to 2023. That's a kind of a short little historic summary of us, really. Yeah.
What's that, 87 years? No, yes, 87 years. Pretty good going. That. Yeah,
is it 2023? Yeah. So, yeah, as I say, over 90% of flowers are imported, and we're basically one of the last larger growers left doing a cut flower in a full colour range all year round. Those 3 bullet points. If you want a flower any time of the year in any sort of colour, you can come to Crosslands and we've got it. And there's not too many places like that left in the whole of the UK. So, yeah.
Will you be one of the largest flower growers in the UK left, or will there?
No, so there's quite a handful in Lincolnshire. So I don't think I've explained, but we're basically on the south coast, about half an hour west of Brighton. So for people on YouTube, 5 minutes over my shoulder here, we've got the South Downs National Park, and 5 minutes ahead of the camera, we've got the Witterings, we've got the beach. So as we're recording this, it's December, it's 15 degrees outside, and it's beautiful. I'm not sure what it's like where you are, but basically it's a microclimate. So we've got the best soil, the best light levels. It's warmer here in the winter, and it's cooler here in the summer because we've got the nice breeze from the ocean as well. So it's the perfect place to grow stuff. But everything around us is just getting built on with red brick, horrible housing. And Arran District Council, they will allow all these thousands of houses to be built, but they won't allow me to extend my greenhouse to grow sustainable cut flowers for British people. So it's
Seems mental, doesn't it?
It is absolutely mental. So there's us down here, but up in Lincolnshire, there's Smith and Munson and a few other large growers, and they sort of seem to survive because they're near the supermarket pack houses. It's not because they've got the best light levels, the best soil and the best this. They just seem to be in the right spot for distribution. But we're such a small island that shouldn't be an excuse. And that's another thing that's so antiquated. I don't know if it's within the farming industry, but especially within the flower industry, basically because of fair trade, it's cheaper to get something from Kenya into Holland, through the Dutch auctions, over to Great Yarmouth, to a pack house, to a middleman, to a wholesaler, to a florist, to your home, than it is to get flowers from the south coast to the Midlands in British flowers. It's so antiquated, you know. It's but I guess we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so we're not the only one left, but we're one of the last flower growers left. Yeah.
It's you said talk about it later. It's probably something we should cover. One thing you mentioned the temperature. You had 15 degrees. We're currently sitting at a ripe old 4 degrees here in South Scotland. And just for reference, 2 days ago, I filmed with a lady, Rachel Stratton, who is currently based in Norway, that had just had negative 28. So in the last 3 days of filming, I've filmed a difference of 43 degrees.
I mean, it was -6 here when we had the proper northerly winds, but yeah, it only lasted for about a week, so it wasn't too bad. So it's pretty good. And that's what I always say. Why grow something in the UK if it takes a lot of input to get a little bit out of it? The big bullet point on this is that British Alstroemeria, or known as the Peruvian lily, because it's called Alstroemeria, the crop that I grow, the flower I grow, because you've got to blame that on a Swedish dude, a Swedish baron that went over to Peru and Chile in the 1700s, and he brought the Alstroemeria seed back, and his name was Alstroemeria, so that's why it's called Alstroemeria. But common name is lily of the Inca, or Peruvian lily. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to flip-flop the camera around, and guys on YouTube, this is what the flower looks like. I've just spotted one in the flower bed here that's opened up.
Oh, they're gorgeous, aren't they? They're gorgeous.
So that's what they look like when they're fully in bloom. Nice, big, fat, juicy buds. This variety is called lemon, which is a lemony colour. And this is how we harvest them. We harvest them nice, elongated, fat buds. And they're not a cut flower, they're a hand-picked flower. So I'm just going to get my hand in there and literally pick it straight out the soil, just like. Right. So there you go. It's not a cut flower, it's a hand-picked flower, and that's how we pick it. So we harvest them at nice, big, fat, juicy, ripe buds, and then the customer gets that opening out to that in their home. So that's why in the greenhouse it looks all green, because the colour is always with the customer. So it's always green in the greenhouse, and then they blast open, bang open in people's homes like that.
So that one, for those listening on YouTube, or not listening on YouTube, sorry, watching on YouTube, that you just showed there that had bloomed, or I'm probably using the wrong word here, flowered, whatever. Are they? You wouldn't sell them like that. You're selling them still ready to open up, yeah.
Yeah, so we harvest nice, big, fat, juicy, elongated buds, and that's the big difference with my flowers. The imported flowers are harvested way, way too tight. It would be like if you're farming strawberries or tomatoes, you know, when you grow your own. Do you want yellowy green strawberries and orangey tomatoes, or do you want nice, big, fat, red, juicy fruit? That's what you want. And that's the big difference. Food and flowers, we're on a similar path. We want to be harvesting the crop at the correct bud stage. So all of the imported flowers, they're harvested really small buds so they can fit more in a shipping container, more in an aeroplane. Basically, if you fit more of the same thing in the same space, you make more money. But that's what we're not interested in money here. We're interested in quality products. So that's how we harvest. So I'll just quickly show for YouTube, but if we were in Kenya, Ecuador, Colombia, we'd be harvesting, look, these tiny little bullet-shaped buds, and basically that won't produce a quality flower. That'll be all frazzled. You'll see them in the supermarket, Alstroemeria. They'll be frazzled and weird and ropey looking and old, and it's because they're harvested too tight. But look at the big difference between this bullet-shaped bud and those big buds. So I'll put them alongside each other. Look, I'll put them alongside each other. So they're the ones that we harvest, those nice, big, fat, juicy, elongated buds, compared to these tiny little ones, look. And that's the big difference between how you harvest your crop, just like any type of farming. So we harvest like that, not like that.
And are these hand not cut, hand picked, Ben? That's
Yes.
they are, yeah.
We don't have machines.
Yeah.
No,
No,
we don't have machines. It's all done by hand. So the prepping of the beds, the planting of the plants. So this is what the plants look like when they come onto the nursery. They're in these little 9 centimeter pots. So this is what the Alstroemeria come like. You can see the root system growing nice in the pot. And then you put that in the ground. We put this in the ground in August, and come November, they're mature plants and we can start harvesting from it. And if we look after our plants, they last for 20, 30 years. So nice and sustainable that we're not replanting 100% of our crop. We only replant less than 5% of the crop a year. Right. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of flower beds, but this year we only replanted one. And last year we replanted none. A lot of our flower beds are over 30, nearly 40 years old, still producing good quality stems because we know what varieties cope best with the British weather and we know how to look after them. But that's all done by hand, the planting, the cutting, the picking's done by hand, and also the processing and the packet. Everything's all pretty much done by hand because it's one of those jobs, you know. I can't just get like a machine just to do everything. No.
It would be a very, very intricate machine, and it plays into your whole mantra that it's done by hand, though. Those transplants, do you grow them from seed or are they brought in?
No, so it's all grown under license. So for anyone listening or watching and actually wants the plants, we don't do that. All of our plants, they're grown under license. It would be illegal for me, to divide the plants, sell the plants. So we sell the cut. We sell the cut flowers only. So it's all grown under license. We get checked up twice a year to make sure we're not illegally dividing our roots. But in Britain, in the UK, Alstroemeria is known as a protected ornamental. So by protected ornamental, it wants to be in a greenhouse, ideally. But in places like Kenya, Colombia, Ecuador, Cambodia, a lot of illegal root division happened because they could just go into a field. 1 acre became 2, 4, 8, 16. They got big quick illegally. That has stopped a lot now because they get checked up on as well. But a lot of illegal root division, it can't happen here. So it's all grown under license. So very specialist, very expensive. So our flower beds, for those that are watching, our flower beds are 1 meter wide, 30 meters long, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of these flower beds all around the nursery. And to just replant one of these beds is about £2,500, £2,500. So it's very specialist and very expensive. The varieties we grow, they've been bred for their vase life, their height, their color, their flower size, all of that stuff. So it's not your average garden varieties. Yeah.
How many plants will you get by meter squared, roughly?
Yeah. So these little bad boys, these little dudes, 135 of these plants go into one of our flower beds.
That's one of the 30 by ones?
Yeah, so all of our flower beds, they're 1 meter wide by 30 and 135 plants that I'm holding up here on the video.
So it's about 4.5 a meter squared? 4.5?
I don't know.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
All I know is that we've still got Grandad's little bits of string that he drew little black marks on. We put the bit of string down the middle of the bed where there's a black mark. That is how we plant them and stagger them. We've always done it that way, and that's how it works.
Excellent.
So a bit of old school technology there, a bit of string with some marks on it, and that's where these plants get staggered into the bed, and they just get planted wrist deep in the ground. And so they get planted in August, and we get some flowers off in November, December time. And that's how we do it. That's how we rock and roll with it.
So
yeah, but nice and sustainable is the main thing, because we're not replanting all of the crop. So yeah.
I would just like to quickly interrupt the show for a minute to give you some extra information on our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan offer bespoke cover for farms and estates the UK over, and will give you tailored insurance for anything on the farm, from your old workhorse tractor that's been around 20 years or a fancy new and exciting diversification.
Yeah, you mentioned at the start there's 3 things, that the various colours all year round, and I've forgotten the third one.
So it's a full colour range.
Yeah.
All year round, and they're British.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. So 2 questions there. All year round, you're putting the first plant in originally in that August time. How over time, how many sort of harvests are you getting from each plant a year? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Right. Okay. So let's take it back. So we Alstroemeria. It's not a seed and it's not a bulb. It's not a one-hit wonder. As I say, it's not a seed or a bulb that you put in the ground, it grows, you cut it. Next year, you've got to put another seed, another bulb in the ground. In this pot here is a rhizome, a root system, which goes into the bed. And so our beds are full of roots and rhizomes. And basically, from a metre squared, we expect to get about 200 stems in a metre squared over an annual cycle. So times that by 4 or 5 acres of greenhouse, you got, well, we harvest millions of stems a year. Yeah, I don't know how many it is, but we harvest millions of stems a year. We've got a plethora, a smorgasbord of different varieties. We've got over 70 different varieties, and that ensures that we have a full colour range available all year round, because all the varieties, people say, oh, Alstroemeria, is that what you do? Well, that's a farmer that just grows mushrooms, but you might grow loads of different varieties of mushrooms and they all grow at different weird times and things. And that's the same for me. I do over 70 different varieties, which is like growing over 70 different types of flowers, because each variety, some like the summer, some like the winter, some grow better in this area, some grow better in that area. So it's not as easy as just whacking these in the ground and hey, presto, you've got flowers. There's a lot of science involved, and it really bugs me and really frustrates me that our government call our job unskilled. You know,
so yes, 100%.
Yes, someone in Kenya and Colombia gets paid $1 a day for what I do. I get that, but you know, I only sleep for 3-4 hours a day out of 24, and I'm busy doing soil analysis and you know, maintaining the crop. It's a skill. We probably go through about 20 people a year that can't even pick a flower. They have no they have no feel. They have no you know, working in all weathers, working outside, getting up early, actually feeling a plant and picking it correctly and quickly and efficiently. And these are all skills. We shouldn't class our jobs as unskilled labor and unskilled farming. And we need to really keep banging on about this. And that's what I do in my talks, because it is a profession, it is a science, and it is a skill. You know, we put skill, passion, love, and energy into everything we farm and grow within the UK. And it really bugs me that we think we can just get anyone to pick or harvest our crops, because that isn't true. We're a tiny little flower nursery, really, on planet Earth. And I prove that every season by 20, 30 people that can't even handle a plant and pick it and maintain it, because they have nothing in them. They're just
a skill. It's a skill. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it really bugs me.
And I totally get that. I mean, I was speaking to a really good friend yesterday who had spent a lot of time out in New Zealand as a milker, and she had her visa declined because it wasn't a skilled job. And I'm like, putting clusters on a cow isn't a skilled job, but making sure those cows are looked after well is a skilled job. You know, it's like, just like you're saying, we're sort of undervaluing these things. Tell you what, see if you make a bit of noise, Ben, because it'll be seeing me because I'm speaking, so they can see what you're doing at the minute. It's a good view.
Oh, right. I was just actually showing you the sun is actually coming out here. So it feels about 20 degrees in the greenhouse now. If you can see behind me, it's very bright now. Here in Sussex, we've got the Sussex sunshine beaming through the glass. So I thought I'd just show you that.
That's a humble flex for the 23rd of December, that is.
Yeah, look at it. Beautiful. Yeah, so it's really nice and bright. It doesn't, but I mean, very rarely does it snow. We get a bit of snow on the tops of the downs, you know, the South Downs, but I mean, it doesn't really snow here. Even when people got snow, when it was -5, -6 or whatever, we had a bit of ice and frost, but nothing major, because we're so close to the beach. You know, the beach is literally 5 minutes there. So, well,
it's handy. And when you mention some of the other countries, which is going to be my question in a wee second, you know, temperature at least has got to be involved. You know, or everywhere else you're considering. The third thing was colour. you showed us really nice sort of light yellow lemon was the variety you said. How many colours and what colours are on offer of Alstroemeria?
Oh, around the world you can get thousands, but as I say, we do over 70 varieties. That keeps me busy enough, and that ensures that basically if you want white, red, orange, yellow, purple, cream, lilac, any colour you can think of. The only colours, basically it's easier to say the only colours we don't do are blue and black, but we do all the other colours. And as I say, we have lots of varieties, so at any one time of the year, if that white variety doesn't like winter, we've got one that does, so I can deliver white or whatever. So it's over 70 varieties, and that just enables us to have a nice good mix of colour all year round. Yeah,
that is so much more than I expected. I was expecting like 3 colours there. That was very impressive.
No, do the full, what we call the full colour range. So if anyone, a florist or a customer phones me up and goes, Ben, I want 100 stems of red, 100 stems of white, yellow, whatever, then we've got it. We've got it. Yeah. So that's.
This is a bit of an unrelated, but I feel like I have to ask a question. You mentioned you don't have black. Is there flowers you can get black?
I don't know. I think I've seen roses and things, but I don't know if they're artificially black or not. But I have seen black flowers before, but I don't know.
No.
You know, again, I mean, I know we just talked about temperature. So I was saying, why grow something in the UK that takes a lot of input? Well, there's 2 really big bullet points on what I grow, the Alstroemeria. Number 1, it's a cool crop. So by a cool crop, we mean it doesn't take a lot of heat. So we're on biomass here. We've got local wood pellets that we burn. And we used to burn about 100 to 120 tons of pellets a winter. This winter so far, even by the time this comes out in January, we've probably only burnt about 20 tons, proving that our winters are getting warmer. So the temperature that we need of a winter's night is only 10 degrees. So the plants are absolutely happy in here at 10 degrees. They'd be happy at 1 degree. But, you know, we don't need, like if you were growing poinsettias, you'd need 20 degrees. If you're growing lilies or tulips, you need 15 degrees, or lisianthus or something. But Alstroemeria, it's known as a cool crop. So it's nice and sustainable that we don't need a lot of heat. And when we do heat, we're using local wood. Secondly, it's known as a dry crop. So we only water for 20 minutes once a month in the winter, 20 minutes once every 2 weeks in spring and autumn, and 20 minutes once every 10 days in the summer. So even in this hot summer that we've just had in 2022, we've not been watering every day. We've not been watering every other day. We've not even been watering every week. So it's a cool crop. It's a dry crop. We're not hardly replanting it. So it's nice and sustainable to grow within in the UK. And hence that's why Grandad got on well with it. And it was seen as a good crop to grow in the UK. So even though I'm large scale, you might watch Gardener's World sometimes and they go, right plant for the right place. You know, you don't want to get a plant because you love it and then you try and stick it somewhere which it's not going to thrive. So it's just like farming and growing in the UK. Why try, as I say, grow something or produce something that's got a lot of, especially with the fertilizer and the costs all going up by about 400-600%. My costs have gone up between 400 to 600%, whether that's little elastic bands that go on the flowers or packaging or fertilizer. It's all gone up by extortionate amounts. So we're lucky that we don't have a lot of stuff that we need to buy in. So it's been quite handy. Yeah.
It makes sense, sort of, the name was, you said Peruvian lily or lily of the Inca. So, I mean, that's very high up. Temperatures are going to be low.
But they naturally live in the Andes. They like living sort of halfway up the Andes in Chile and Peru, and they're little buggers. They just keep on growing. They don't let you rest, even in the winter. You know, we're still harvesting thousands of stems a week in December and January. You know,
and the countries you mentioned, I think it was Kenya, Ecuador, and Cambodia. But is that where also Alstroemeria have been growing? Because temperature control units.
over 90% of flowers in the UK are imported, and most of the flowers people think come from Holland. Well, yes, they come via Holland. So everything goes into Holland into the big auctions, but things are coming into Holland from Cambodia, Colombia, Ecuador, Kenya. It's coming from all around the world. So yes, exactly. Our labeling is so poor on our flowers. So it might say Holland, but it's actually been grown in Kenya. So for example, British bacon can no longer just say British bacon. If it's Danish bacon, it will say Danish bacon packed in Britain. But with flowers, I've just been into a supermarket today on a research mission. You go into Sainsbury's, it just says Alstroemeria, £4. It doesn't say what chemicals are on the packaging, what chemicals are on the flowers, not when it was picked, where it was picked, where it was packaged. You've got no information. As I say, the flower industry is 30, 40 years behind in terms of the food and farming industry. And it's just not good enough because people are just so unaware of where their flowers have come from, not because it's their fault, but it's just a lack of product placement and labeling. It's illegal. You can't, when you buy clothing and it says 100% recycled, well, it's got to be 100% recycled. Yeah. When you buy a car and it's a hybrid, well, it's got to be electric and gas. When you buy food, it says British bacon. Well, you expect that to be British bacon or red tractor or Scottish lamb instead of New Zealand lamb. It's all laid out for you. Free range eggs instead of barn eggs. But at the moment, you walk into a supermarket, you go up to the flower stand, and it's just a chaotic mess of horrible packaging. And we talk about plastics. There's probably more plastic packaging within the flower industry than there is in the food industry. You go into a supermarket around Christmas time, like I've just been, there's plastic rods with plastic Santas on, there's plastic glitter over everything, there's plastic labels, plastic cellophane. It's just plastic. It's just not talked about enough, and that's what I do. I rant on about it all the time.
I'm guessing the reason for that is the fact flowers don't fall under food stuff, because, like you say, we have to say where it's from. And funnily enough, as someone who's been to the auctions in Holland, I knew they were coming in from elsewhere, but I don't buy flowers often, in fairness. The few times I have, I've just assumed that's where they came from, but that's a really good point. You should be able to trace back to literally the roots.
It's not food, but you go to most shops, jewellery.
Exactly.
Jewelry is labelled. When you watch a David Attenborough program or any TV program, at the end it will give a carbon footprint rating of how much carbon it took to film a millisecond of that little bug down there, or the millisecond of that little fish thousands of meters below water. It has to be. It's a £2.2 billion forgotten lost industry within the UK, and it's just not good enough. If we're to lower our carbon footprint, well, if you look behind me here, if we can grow something of quality in our own country, surely that's better than importing it from around the world. And don't forget, these planes and boats are going back empty because we don't produce anything in the UK that we're sending out to any other country. So half that carbon footprint is wasted because we're not producing anything much that's going back to Kenya and Colombia and Ecuador. They don't want our stuff, so you got to think about that as well, that half the journey is wasted because nothing's coming back the other side. So big problems with the well, I know food has got a long way to go. We've had your Jamies, your Jimmies, your Hugh Fernies, the war on waste, the packaging, sourcing locally and all this. But flowers, we're just getting left behind, and that's why I do my little British Flowers Rock campaign and just do my bit. And I'm very grateful to have people saying, "Oh, do you want to come on my podcast or YouTube thing?" Because just need to get the message out there, and hopefully one day someone up in the government will actually switch on and go, "Oh, I think we need a minister for protected ornamentals," because at the moment there's no one in the government, there's no one in DEFRA. There's no one in the NFU. There's no one up in the ether here that is actually doing anything to help people like me. And it's just not good enough. It isn't good enough. I'm a member of the NFU through habit, really. We've been a member since, great granddad. But there's no one there that actually does anything for flowers. We don't get any government grants. We don't get any help. We actually get nothing. we just have to fight for ourselves. And it shouldn't be like that, because I know other areas of farming do get some support and help and things, but with flowers we're getting left behind, and it's not right, you know.
No, I agree. And as someone I'm not involved in the flower industry at all, but I'm involved in the rural sector. I speak to a lot of people through work, whatever. Even I wasn't really aware, so it's I mean, you've changed the mind of someone today, it's good that you're getting that story out there. You mentioned the sort of impact of fair trade, Ben. Could you maybe elaborate a bit more on that?
What I mean is, why do our government give other governments money to grow stuff that then comes all the way here? There's no fair trade for UK. So back in the Land Settlement Association days, they used to give grants to modernise my greenhouse. They used to give grants to put in screens that go into the greenhouse that shade in the summer and come all the way and box in the crop in the winter to stop heat loss. There used to be, scientific stuff done where they would test things and what works in the UK, what soil are you on? But nothing is, it's so antiquated and small scale, and even just the transport, as I say, the transport paid for with fair trade. It costs me more to get flowers from Brighton to Scotland than it does from around the world. My brain just can't comprehend why our government doesn't even give a proportion or a percentage to its own people to grow stuff for its own people. Lowering the carbon footprint, climate change and things like that, surely that's the number one thing. And we've had ash clouds, we've had Brexits, we've had COVIDs, we've had the war in Russia. This has all impacted less stuff on our shelves, and what is on our shop shelves is more expensive because we've relied so heavily on all this importation. And if we actually grew our own stuff, we would have more on the shelves, and it will be better for our British public, because they wouldn't be spending all their money on the airfare or freight or whatever that has to come in. So it really just makes no sense. And that's why the LSA was set up, to get our own people back into work. Then we had to dig and grow for Britain during the war and all that. And we were basically very self-sufficient and sustainable as a country. So if there was an ash cloud, a Brexit, a COVIDs, a war in another country, we weren't so heavily reliant on importation. And I just don't know why our governments never learn, or people never learn, because we've had ash cloud, Brexit, COVID and a war. We've had 4 things in my generation that have all been surely triggers to trigger someone's brain and go, oh, what if this keeps on happening and we keep running out of stock and our people have to pay loads of money for food and flowers and clothes and stuff? My mind I don't understand how, I understand how fair trade works, but I just don't understand why there's not something for British farmers and growers closer to home. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I mean, I completely agree. And you're talking about those 4 sort of catastrophes. It's not even just a generation, it's a decade, isn't it? I mean, when the ash cloud was 2013, wasn't it? I think. So, I mean,
yeah.
So, I mean, it's really not been a long
that
period.
was caused havoc within the
huge,
transport and everything. Yeah, it was a nightmare.
I think things like fair trade, with a lot of these sort of things, I think the principle and also a lot of the practice is excellent. But it does come to the point, I always sort of wonder with governments if it's some kind of sort of washing that you can like make it look like you're doing brilliant, but you're not considering the full story, like you're saying.
Well, I understand. I love fair trade. Instead of growing plants, they grow Alstroemeria. Instead of doing illegal drug runs, they grow something else, bananas. I totally understand that, and we don't want people working in horrible conditions and all of that. I totally understand that. But if we're looking at the whole picture, over 90% of flowers are imported. Well, if they give me a little bit of a grant or something, it's not going to affect a 400-acre farm in Kenya or whatever. Yeah. But it's just like we need not just financial help, but my British Flowers Rock campaign, it's free. Anyone can get involved. It's my little thing. It's not a proper government NFU thing, but there should be something like that. Like we've had the Jamies, the Jimmies, the Hugh Fernleys, the Red Trap, all this stuff. It's it needs something. It basically needs someone bigger and better than me to to get this out to the masses. But
maybe it's not bigger and better than you. Maybe you are the person. You get a big following on social media. You know.
Well, I am the person at the moment because I'm the only one banging on about it. But that's the frustrating thing when I go and talk to 100 people or 200 people at a garden show, or people like my stuff on IG, Twitter, or Facebook. It's frustration because people, they understand it, they get it. It's very easy to explain, but it's annoying that people in NFU, DEFRA, government, higher levels that get paid way more than me can't comprehend it in their minds. They can't work out when it's so obvious to everyone else, to the normal guy, girl, whatever, that goes into a supermarket and go, oh yeah, Ben's right. I don't know what chemicals are sprayed on these flowers. I don't know where they've come from. I don't know all this stuff. I would love to buy flowers from Ben or another grower. We need more of this. We need to educate people and all this. I mean, it's 2023. And as I say, it's in terms of the fashion, food, car, all lots of other industries, we are way behind on getting this sustainability, environmental stuff going on. You know, it's we're sort of getting left out of everything, you know. So
no, it does seem that way. And you mentioned that you don't know what chemicals are on these crops, and you also mentioned earlier that your inputs are, you know, not huge. What is the inputs, and also probably important as well, what cultivation method is involved in flowers? How's the soil treated? How's it worked? All that sort of thing.
Right, getting science. This is going to go on this podcast, isn't it? At what time are we? You'll love it. We'll stop when you say you're in control. You can tell me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Right. That's fine.
So when we were on the LSA, obviously Grandad wanted to move off of it. So basically, he did a very good job that we're on nice medium loam soil. So we're not on sand and we're not on clay. Nothing like clay apart from Rafa Nadal, you know. There's difficult growth. If you're growing on sand, you're going to use a lot of water. If you're growing in clay, your roots are going to rot and it's going to be horrible and stodgy. So we're on nice medium soil. We're very flat, as you can see behind me here. We're very flat. We're between the downs and the beach, the ocean. So we're in a nice little microclimate, as we said. So we're all naturally perfectly set up. And you may find it odd, but we are still growing out of Mother Earth. So even a lot of flowers and food that's grown in the UK, as I'm sure you're aware, they've had to resort to hydroponics, rock wool, other growing techniques, because they've sterilized and replanted, and they've lost all the good microbes and bacteria that were once in their soil. But because we're not heavily replanting, we've still got very, very good high levels of microbes in our soil. And every 2 years, every basically Christmas, so I'll get a delivery next week of about 20 odd tons of organic compost. So we're peat free, but we just have organic compost. So that looks after the biology. And we take hundreds of core samples of the soil. That goes off to the laboratory, gets analyzed for the chemistry, and then we make up our own fertilizer based on those results. So we only give the crop what it needs at that particular time. It's almost like a recalibrating the soil, because you can put on generic compost and generic fertilizer, but your crop may not want that, and you might be wasting energy in the environment. So we only give our crop what it needs when it needs it. So our fertilizer usage, and as I say, watering, we only water, well, through January. I'm only going to do one watering in the whole of January.
That's amazing.
You know, a month. So in the winter, so our levels, it's quite low input, you know. So as I say, apart from putting in a little bit of heat, which we get local biomass, local wood from, we grow our crop naturally. You'll notice above my head here, if you're watching on the video, you don't see any artificial lighting. So we don't have any artificial lighting, which is a good thing, because the bats and the birds at night aren't getting sketched out and weirded out, and we're not causing any light pollution. So we don't have any artificial lighting as well. Well, I couldn't afford it anyway, but you know, sometimes you go over to Kent, don't you? And all the tomato nurseries are lit up, and there's a blackout blind on your Airbnb, and all the birds are getting weirded out, and it's not good for nature, basically. So apart from, as I say, putting in a little bit of heat, which we do, I'll just show you I've got the pellets here. So this is what the pellets look like. So that's what they look like. And then our heating pipes. it's a flow and return. So where my finger is here on the video, we've got our heating pipe that's sat down by the soil, and we've got a flow and return that goes around the whole bed.
Right.
And that heats the bed, because whenever you're growing anything on a large scale or a smaller scale, you want heat to rise up through your crop, through whatever you're growing, because especially through the winter, a day like today, this morning, it was really condensated and damp and everything in the greenhouse. But with the heating down by the soil, as the heat radiates off that pipe, it's going to clear off all the condensation and dampness that builds up on your plant material, so it keeps the crop nice and dry. Once the crop's been harvested, we don't apply any chemicals. So obviously, it takes about 5 weeks for flowers to get from Kenya into your house. Okay. Basically, as they travel around the world, it's a bit like Han Solo in Jabba's palace, sort of cryogenically frozen in carbonite. They're frozen at 0.5 degree. They're blasted with loads of chemicals to keep them looking fresh, but they're not, obviously. But after ours are harvested, they're not sprayed with any chemicals, and they're in a home. They're with a customer within 1 or 2 days. Otherwise, we throw them away, because what's the point of me giving you 3, 4 week to 3 week old flowers? You might as well go to Waitrose or another supermarket, or they all have imported Alstroemeria, all of them. Yeah. So whole host, Lidl, Aldi, whatever. And you're better off, if you don't want that, you want fresh stuff. So we don't sort of preserve our stuff in any chemicals. It's all natural. And we don't use any pesticides or insecticides. So it's all about biocontrol, introducing biology into the greenhouses to combat against biology. So a couple of examples.
I think you've just went away too far from the Wi-Fi, Ben.
Sure. So, is that better?
That's better. Yeah, you appeared for a minute there. Yeah.
All right. I'd say we don't use any pesticides or insecticides. So it's all about biocontrol, introducing biology into the greenhouse that we don't want. So this is Incarsia. You get 60 little larvae on a card where my thumb is, and yes. We hang this up around tomato plants or aubergine plants. That attracts whitefly to the tomato or aubergine plants, and then the Incarsia, the mini wasps, eat the whitefly, basically. So you're using biology to combat against what you don't want.
Well, it's funny you say that, because my next question was going to be what challenges do you have from pests, weeds and diseases? So that's obviously one of your pests there. You've got a solution to any weeds and disease issues?
Yeah, so we got whitefly, aphid, black fly, black bean aphid, and if any viewers or listeners have houseplants, it's not been a good year for houseplants, because it's been such a long, dry, hot summer. Mm-hmm. You may have seen little webbing around your houseplants or in your greenhouses, and that's spider mite. Spider mite is a problem in long, dry, hot summers, and we also use biology for that. We use Phytocilus, which is basically twice it's another type of mite. It's twice the size of the spider mite. We sprinkle those guys over the spider mite, and the Phytocilus eat and gorge themselves on the red spider mite. So basically, say we're introducing biology just about as we start seeing the first signs of stuff that we don't want hanging about, and we eradicate it using other bits of biology and banker plants and permaculture, growing things alongside other things to naturally control pests and diseases. And we do that, and we're proving that on a large scale. If you basically identify something at a garden level, we sort it out. Unlike Kenya, where they load up the helicopter with spray and they'll spray 400 acres and blast everything out of sight, whereas we identify it as soon as we spot it. So I don't know, we'll get the cabbage white butterflies in June, July. We know we start seeing caterpillar poo on some of our leaves, and we start looking out for caterpillars as soon as the butterflies are sort of stopped hanging about. So we've been going since 1936, and again, this is unskilled, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah, you've got no idea what you're doing. Yeah, it's quite clear.
So it's a skill, just identifying when, where, when you're going to get your pests and how to combat it. And all of this biocontrol, it was all used in the 1920s, 1930s, before pesticides, insecticides became sort of large scale and cheap, basically. Yeah. And now So it's all been well researched and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what we do. So
when you were talking about that, I've forgotten, it was Encarden.
Encarsia, the mini parasitic wasp.
Encarsia. You mentioned tomato and aubergine plants. So are you growing more than just the Alstroemeria then? There is also other crops, or is that elsewhere?
Yes, so we grow banker plants or companion plants. So we have courgette, cucumber, eggplant, aubergine plant, tomato plants sporadically growing through the greenhouses because they attract pests off of our Alstroemeria onto that banker plant. And on that banker plant, we've built up a good population of that Encarsia, that parasitic wasp. And as I say, those wasps will lay eggs inside the whitefly. They'll make a host of the whitefly. So you'll limit your whitefly population, and the Encarsia, they don't harm the Alstroemeria. So again, it's permaculture. It's just growing things alongside other things, using that biocontrol just to naturally control pests that we don't want hanging about.
And they are growing alongside. It's not integrated into rotation or anything like that. No, they are just growing.
No, they're just grown, yeah. And then we make tomato pie or moussaka, ratatouille.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we obviously grow our own. We got raspberry canes, and I grow a lot of my own fruit and veg here and stuff as well. But yeah.
You mentioned sort of supermarkets, and I think it'd be fair to say you don't speak over highly of some of the supermarkets flower side.
Oh no, they don't treat growers with any respect or fairness or anything, and there's no the communication is lacking, and as I say, everything's so antiquated. Getting it from the greenhouse to their warehouse, but they're quite happy to buy Kenyan stuff that goes around the world, and it just goes into their warehouse. Well, come and pick my stuff up because I've just seen your van go down the A27. Do you know what I mean? That's what I mean. It's just so, it's just not good enough. It's glaringly obvious that things can be way better very easily. But if it's cheaper by 0.001p a stem, they'll go over there. So we used to supply any supermarket you can think of. We've supplied them in our lifetime. The last supermarket we were supplying was Sainsbury's just before it was February. It was Valentine's Day 2020. I got a horrible phone call from a lady at Sainsbury's, and she said, "Ben, we don't want your flowers anymore because we can get them 4p cheaper a bunch from Colombia." So there you go. And that was a phone call. And that's just a hang-up phone call. You're done, And
that was it. It was there's no contract. It's just you're done. That's how it goes.
Just like that parsnip family and the War and Waste with their wonky veg, all that. It's it's just not right. It's just not right, and it's all done penny pinching and things. But luckily, we now do supply Morrison's. Morrison's have been way better. Communication has been good. They understand when the weather's not right, we've got less, or the weather's good, they can take a bit more. Communication's a lot better. The actual people from actual Morrison's have actually been into my greenhouses, whereas Sainsbury's and everyone else, they just sent middlemen that just talked about money, and they didn't actually care about the biocontrol and all the sustainability stuff we're doing and all this stuff. It was all straight, hard to the point, your mind just gets blown. It really does. But we've had, with the British Flowers Rock thing, basically, this podcast's going on, isn't it? But I used to do marine biology.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so I used to do marine biology. I studied it as a kid. So I did marine biology from 2000 to 2011. Really enjoyed living around the world and doing lots of stuff for the environment. Loved it. Came back here in 2011. And between 2011 and 2014, I tried to get help. So I don't know. I tried to contact Gardeners World, Country File. I got my local MP. My local MP for the South Down region came here. But yeah. Ow. Yeah, sorry, someone's coming into the greenhouse. If you could.
Not at all. I don't mind.
Oh, Dad's. Yeah. Anyway. It shouldn't be too bad. They're going to turn on some equipment. So basically I tried to get help from NFU, DEFRA, local government, even Country Farm, that wouldn't reply. So in 2014, that's when I started my little campaign and tried to just educate people, and that we weren't being treated very nicely or fairly.
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy
and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry. It's good, and it's good to spread that sort of message, if you want, Ben. But the reason I'd started the thing about supermarkets was you mentioned there about Morrison's. Is Morrison's 100% of your market, or are you selling through other streams as well?
No, so obviously back in great-granddad's, granddad's and dad's early days, it was sustainable to supply supermarkets and wholesalers. Because back then, wholesalers and supermarkets wanted to buy British if it was around, and I think the guy that started Sainsbury's actually was all for I don't know, I've forgotten the actual, it wasn't Jay Sainsbury, but the guy that helped him start Sainsbury originally, his ethos was buying British and local and all that stuff, and that's what it was back then, because there was obviously a lot more growers, but it's basically unsustainable to supply just wholesalers and supermarkets. So we used to supply obviously Covent Garden, Weston, Spitalfields, the big three around the M25, around London. And I remember as a kid slapping on Sheffield, Birmingham, Leicester onto the flower boxes. And we used to supply the Midland markets as well. Now we just supply Brighton Market. So so if you think, we just supply Morrison's and Brighton. So it's been up to me, my generation, to find other people to sell to. So we supply direct to the public. So for 25 quid, you get 4 big bunches delivered to your door. And if it's for a gift, we put in a little message as well. Because back in lockdowns, letterbox sales went up 800%. You've probably heard of Freddie's flowers, Wild and Bloom, Bloom and Wild, Serenata flowers, Arena flowers, Funky Pigeon, Moonpig. So I contacted them all and said, because they use a lot of Alstroemeria in their designs, I said, do you want my Alstroemeria? They said no. Basically, we want the cheap imported inferior stuff. So I ended up doing it on my own. So we now do direct deliveries to the public via post. We supply direct to florists. We supply direct to farm shops. We supply direct to cafes and restaurants. We just supply anyone that cares about planet Earth, because we've only got, and we need to look after it. So you just work with like-minded businesses. There's a hairdresser in Brighton that doesn't use any weird products. All of their products are natural, and they have my flowers in their hairdressers, because their ethos is sustainable, and so's mine. So you end up, selling flowers to all sorts of random people. But we've basically had to diversify who we supply to survive, because until Morrison's, the supermarkets, you just woke up every day just, are we going to send anything today? You can't run a show like that. So people, they just hit me up on Instagram and direct message me, and it's in their home the next day. So it's picked, packed, and it's in their home the next day. Or a lot of florists follow me, and it's fresh stuff. It's been in the dirt the day before they get it. It's not gone around the world through a Dutch auction,
Well, that's it. And it's funny you mentioned Moonpig. Moonpig was literally the next thing I was about to ask. I write a lot of notes as we go. I always wondered where Moonpig flowers came from. I was quite certain it was not Britain, but you've answered that question. I had one question before I saw your award winning. Could you tell us about that? What award have you won?
Well, I don't want to be big-headed because it's me and a team, but we've won the Sussex Countryside Gold Award. So that's for our efforts on sustainability. And we won the Grower Award in 2019. And I went up to Leicester a couple of months ago and we won it again in 2022. So we've won the Grower Award twice, and that's for the British Florist Association. So that's basically the MTV awards of the flower world, basically. So they basically have the Florist of the Year award, Florist Shop of the Year, Florist Web Shop of the Year, and they have, which I think is really cool, they have the Grower of the Year. And actually half the growers were obviously from other countries this year as well.
Yeah.
So I thought, how rough is this going to be at the British Florist Association that a grower in Ecuador wins it or whatever? So, and these were big growers, massive growers. So I thought, well, I'm not really going to win this time, maybe, but I'm going to give it a go and, see if we can get any votes. And it wasn't based solely on voting. It was also 2022's award was based on sustainability and what the grower does to help the environment. So obviously we do a heck of a lot, as to mention the British Flowers Rock campaign, which also does, extracurricular stuff as well. So I think we won it on all the stuff that we do. So that was nice. It was recognised, but it would be even better if NFU, DEFRA, the government also recognised it and would, instead of building lots of houses around us, would help us move on a bit here and get it rocking and rolling a bit, because that's what we need. So yeah, we're proud of the achievements, but there's a heck of a long way to go. And I don't think in my generation, when I'm 80 or 90 and I'm about to keel over in the flower beds here, I just hope it's different. But at the moment, I just can't see it. I just can't see it, because more and more flowers are coming in from other countries, and as I say, over 90% imported, and that statistic isn't going the other way. So it's and I know it, because a lot of my uncles and grandparents and dad, their friends, they used to run market gardens and flower nurseries and plant nurseries, and they sold their land for red brick horrible housing, so I can see it literally here in Sussex and Hampshire. You can see it with your own eyes that our farmland is being built on. So if we've got less farmland, well, we're going to be producing less stuff, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
It's not hard to visually see it going on before your eyes, and it's sad. It is sad.
It is sad. No, it is. And I think, well, I don't think, I'm aware of some NFU folk. I don't know them, but I'm aware of some NFU people that do listen to my podcast quite often. So hopefully they're listening in and having a quick think to themselves. But listen, Ben, here, it's been an absolute education for me. I've enjoyed this so much. I've learned so much. I'll be honest, I didn't want to say this at the start and embarrass myself, or for that matter, my mum. My mum is a big gardener, loves gardening, has a polytunnel herself, is in it all the time. So when I had arranged a discussion with you, I did message her and ask for some guidance. So some of the questions were guided from my dear mother, which I'm sure she will still be listening, because she'll have thoroughly enjoyed this episode. But there is 2 questions that we finish every single podcast with. The first one is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And the second one is, if you had any tips for folk getting into, let's say, nursery growing, what would they be?
Goodness gracious. So the first one, in 5 years' time, I don't know what I'm doing in 5 days' time. Even Christmas Day. Even Christmas Day. I mean, I'll have maybe a couple of hours off Christmas Day, but I'll be whittling away, scheming, skiving, trying to whittle away here. But no, I mean, just in a year, next year, or in 2023, when this podcast comes out, I'm doing a British Flowers Rock Talk at Wisley Flower Show, which is quite a big deal for me. So that'll be really good. And I've got another 70 talks to do in 2023. So whoever I'm going to meet along the journey, beautiful people like yourself, it's just one roller coaster, this farming and growing lark, isn't it? So in 5 years, hopefully people are still enthusiastic about the British Flowers Rock campaign. And hopefully all I can do is try and make a difference here and there. That's all I care about. I just want to try and make a difference on the planet, and growing sustainable flowers on my little patch of planet Earth. I'm happy. And if I can change people's minds or just educate people along the way, then I'm good. So that's that. And what was the other question? I've forgotten now.
If you
advice, hints, tips, and tricks. Okay, well, I am very lucky. I am a 4th generation grower to have all the infrastructure that is around me here. We're talking a lot of money, and to start something from scratch, I've known people that have tried to do it even on a smaller scale, and it's very, very difficult. As I said, over 90% of flowers are imported, but you can find me on social media. You get lots of hints, tips and tricks. I'm very receptive, so you can always message me, and I'm always giving work placements, apprenticeship schemes, giving advice to other growers. I don't like to pay to be a member for things. I think we should all muck in, and we're all in this together. No money should exchange hands to become a member of this club, a member of that club, that society, and that. We should just help each other out, because social media, Zoom things, podcasts, this is all going out. We do all this for the love of it. So people out there that want to get into the flower industry, just message me, hit me up, and that's what people do. I actually had someone messaged me last night, and they said, Ben, I'm going to do my first talk at a garden show. How much do I charge? I'm a little bit nervous. What do I do? And I just told them a few things and made them feel happy about it and where they're going to go and all that. So, just don't be afraid to ask anyone. I do. I annoy people all the time. I annoy you. I said, "Oh, can I come on?" or whatever. Or you said, "Come on," and we found each other through, because I did the week-long farmer thing on the insurance, wasn't it? The guy sponsoring Plan Rural. Yeah, so we've connected via that. So it's just about, I think, putting yourself out there as a farmer grower. My generation, we've had our phone in our hand, and we can use it for good and educational purposes, and that's what I do. I do, the thing I do farmer time. So I do the farmer thing. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
Farmer time. So basically, a farmer is hooked up to a junior school. So I've done farmer time for about 4 or 5 years now, and basically just 20 minutes once every 2 weeks. You go around the nursery with your phone and you talk to junior school kids about how food is done, flowers are grown, and it's called Farmer Time. It's run by Farmer Tom, beautiful guy there, and no, it's good to get involved in it. So
I don't know about any about that. That's just to know about.
It's a leaf initiative, NFU Leaf Learning
Lincoln Environment. Oh no, a different thing.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Lincoln Environment and Farming. That's what it is up in Scotland, Leaf.
Yeah, NFU Leaf thing. Actually, it's sponsored by Sainsbury's, randomly enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so I do things like that. So I think, just farmers, growers out there. I know it's a tough time with all these costs and you can't get into a normality. We've had the Brexits, the COVIDs, now the war going on. It's like every year you just can't get into a rhythm.
That's it. Yeah.
The farming industry, we just can't seem to get into sort of any sort of rhythm. And I know it's tough, but we get through things. And I think us farmers and growers were one of the most resilient sort of lot out there.
I agree.
We're very nimble, we're very agile, and we're very hardy. And we just get through things one way or another for our families and stuff, and that's all we can do. So let's hope 2023's good, but it's probably going to be ups and downs, but we'll keep it positive. We'll keep my British flowers rocking, and
that's it. Keep
things
them rocking. Keep them rocking. Starting the 87th year in production. Listen, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. What a guest you've been. It's one of those ones that time just flies by, which I absolutely love. Just really enjoyed the whole thing. So thank you for that. It's been that education for myself. I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed as well. I hope you've enjoyed being on.
Oh, it's been awesome. And quickly, I know it's a plug. If people want to know more, you want to ask me more stuff, it's Alstroemeria Ben on Twitter and Instagram. Even on Instagram, if you type in Ben Cross, you'll get me, but Alstroemeria Ben. And it's on Facebook at Crosslands Flower Nursery. So you can just hook up with me there and ask me any more info. So, yeah.
What was that?
I'll leave you in peace now.
No, so if you have any questions for Ben, feel free to get in touch on any of those streams, guys. I hope, as I said, hope you've enjoyed. I'm sure you have. Next week we will. What is this? This will be Friday. On next Friday, as I said, we've got Emily on talking about a lot of different interesting things. But the thing that really interested me about Emily was the fact she's growing quinoa or quinoa, as I said earlier, in the UK, which will be pretty cool to hear. Following that, the next Monday we should have another group podcast, which will be with Jane Craigie Marketing. So 3 of the ladies involved in one of the main rural marketing companies I'm aware of in Scotland. Get to meet 3 new people there. So yeah, R2Kast is really starting to fly this year. The goal is to try and hit 75 episodes this year. And we'll see if that's possible, but we'll see where we go with that. But I hope you keep enjoying. Hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to get in touch with me on Rural to Kitchen on Instagram and Facebook if you have any questions. We shall see you next week. Cheers, Ben.
Cheers, thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed another excellent episode of the R2Kast. I just want to take this moment to quickly thank our primary sponsors once more, A-Plan Rural. If you follow A-Plan on social media, you'll see the work they're doing to really promote British farming and back our industry. It's been a pleasure working alongside A-Plan Rural so far, and long may it continue. The values of A-Plan Rural runs perfectly in line with the whole mantra of Rural to Kitchen, and I'm glad to have them on board. Check them out on Instagram at A-Plan Rural and on Facebook at A-Plan Rural Insurance. See you for the next podcast.